Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Loud Little Ducky. We are doing, let me turn that music off. We are doing the cross examination of Jennifer McCabe. We did the direct. Now, Alan Jackson is up to the plate. And let's see what happens. Remember, Jennifer McCabe's demeanor this time around is not as aggressive. She has found her manners. AJ even brings that up at one point. Let's get started. So, remember the last time at the end of her direct with Hank Brennan, she says she just wants to be helpful in figuring out what happened to her friend, John O'Keefe. Helpful. All right. So they start. And she says she has not talked about her testimony with Carrie between trials. They have just talked about the case, not their testimonies, though, just the case. They have become close friends now since this. They didn't know each other really before, but they are like besties now. And they talk about all sorts of things, not just this case. They're just a couple of like soccer moms, sports moms with kids. Nothing nefarious here. She talks about Brian Albert being a first responder and was a Boston police officer like John O'Keefe. And that Kevin Albert, Brian Albert's brother, works for Canton PD. And Chris Albert is a town selectman who's another brother of Brian Albert, the homeowner. And the Canton Town Select Man, they are in charge of Canton PD. They oversee what the police are doing and things. And then Nicole, her sister, is married to Brian Albert. And Denise is another sister. She's the one who wrote the timeline for Carrie and Jen when Peggy asked them to. But they're a close family. But what Jackson did here is he pointed out, okay, your sister is married to a Boston cop. John O'Keefe was a Boston cop. The town of Canton is investigating, and your brother-in-law's brothers work at Canton Police that's investigating. And another one is the town select, who is in charge, or not in charge, but oversees what the police department is doing where another one of your brother-in-law's brothers is at. So he's showing how intertwined all of them are, is basically what he's gisting at. Karen Read is not intertwined with them. The defense is not intertwined with them. Everybody outside that bubble are outsiders. The McCabes and the Alberts, put them together for the McAlberts, all have ties, strong ties in this area. They know powerful people. Karen Read's not as important. They talk about the drinks at the waterfall and then going to Albert's. She talks about that Courtney Proctor, who is Michael Proctor's sister, the disgraced former trooper, his sister is best friends with Julie Albert's sister. So everyone knows everyone. And then why I tell you that I want you to remember that Jen said she just wants to be helpful because now we have talked about all the connections and how everybody is tied together except for Karen. That is what the defense is showing. He brings up the feds. I don't know if he actually says the feds or just another law enforcement agency that was not Massachusetts State Police and was not Canton. Brings up this other law enforcement agency, which we know was the FBI, feds that were investigating the investigation. So she was interviewed by the feds. Jury does not know they are the feds. They might have put it together, but they have not been told outright it's feds. They're not going to be allowed to know that. And they told Jen, the feds, the FBI, whatever you want to call them, told Jen McCabe, it is a crime to lie to us. You cannot lie to us. We can charge you with a crime for lying to us. They can charge you with like obstructing justice if you lie to them. And so the feds just walked up to her car. I think she was at her house and feds approached her. I don't know what the feds were wearing. I don't know if they were wearing FBI gear or if they were just in suits or if they were just in regular plain clothes. I don't know if they were in a marked vehicle, an unmarked vehicle. I have no clue. I would like to know because she says to them when they ask her, "Are you Jen McCabe?" She says, "No, I'm Nicole." I don't remember if she said Nicole Albert, but she said Nicole. Interesting. You're telling people you're your sister. And Jen says that she told them she lied about her name because she thought that they were selling something. And this is why I want to know what they were wearing. Did they show her a badge? Were they in FBI gear? Or were they just in plain clothes and there was nothing that said FBI about them? That was not discussed, obviously, because we can't get into who these people are. So I guess identifying them and saying, I mean, I think you could get into it without saying it. Were they just dressed in like regular people clothes or were they dressed in like law enforcement clothes? But she lied to them because she thought they were selling something. I don't know who comes to you and tries to sell you something and knows your full name. They may just say, "Hey, lady," or "Hey, do you own this home?" or whatever. They do not say, "Is your name Jen McCabe?" And then okay, so we'll get to past that. So after the feds just said it's a crime to lie to us, she lies to them about her name. So she goes inside her house and they call her on the phone and said, "We need to talk. We know you're home. We know you are Jennifer McCabe." Because feds ain't pulling up to your house not knowing who you are. They know exactly who you are. They know your information. They know what you look like before they approach you. They know. And you want to play dumb. She told them, "Okay, we can talk. Give me 10 minutes to get ready." And so that 10 minutes comes and they get ready to talk. Something they ask them is, "Who did you call in that 10 minutes?" I don't know if they have her phone tapped. I don't know if they know that she likes to make phone calls, but they asked her, "Did you call anybody in that 10 minutes?" She says she called her husband. Matt McCabe, and she called Carrie Roberts. And then Matt did come home in the middle of this interview. And she stopped the interview at that point and asked them to leave. Jen brings up later on that she did that so that she could maybe talk to an attorney or, seek advice, help. But when somebody from law enforcement agencies comes knocking on her door to talk to her about certain things, remember, she wanted to be helpful. She is fine talking with anybody at Massachusetts State Police. She is fine with talking to anybody at Canton PD. Why? Because she knows them all. She's friends with them all. She has ties to them. But as soon as somebody outside of that bubble comes knocking and asking questions, she suspends the interview. Later, she does go back. She does end up talking to them later. But for somebody who just wants to be helpful and is telling the truth and wants to help in every way possible, she now knows how to shut her mouth. Interesting. I'm not saying she she could be just like, her husband could have been like, you need to call your attorney. Like, you need to stop talking to them. But interesting enough, the feds leave. And she later calls them back after she suspended the interview. And she says that her husband, Matt, reminded her, you need to tell them who else you talked to. So Matt, the one who's like, make sure y'all shouldn't go driving with that tail light out. What else did her husband remind her of in her direct? Oh, Matt reminded her that she saw Karen Read at 34 Fairview. She didn't remember that on her own. Matt told her that. So Matt remembers all these things, apparently, that Jen forgets. Her husband definitely sees all this. So she calls the feds back and says, I know I told you I only talked to my husband, Matt McCabe, and Carrie Roberts. But actually, I lied. And I I lied because I talked to other people. In that 10 minutes, she says, my husband told me I lied to you. So she called him back and that she had forgot that she had called Peggy in that 10 minutes. Peggy O'Keefe, John O'Keefe's mom. She had also called the DA. She says that it was the witness advocate. But from my understanding of things I've read online, at this point, she didn't actually have a witness advocate. She didn't get a witness advocate until later in the month. So why is she calling the DA's office or Michael Morrissey? And she also called Brian Albert. She has Brian Albert there for her interviews with Proctor She calls Brian Albert when the feds come knocking at her door. She does not get Brian Albert when a dead man is on Brian Albert's lawn. So she calls Matt. She called Carrie. She called Peggy. She called the DA's office. And she called Brian Albert in 10 minutes. She called 5 people in that 10 minutes. But she only admitted in her interview to 2. Why are you lying? If you want to be so helpful, why are you omitting things? And she said, they were just asking questions and I hadn't brushed my teeth yet and all this stuff, and I had forgot I called those people. So it doesn't look good for her in this instance. This is one area where if the jury's taking it in, they know that she initially lied to the police, which can hurt her credibility. If you don't believe her on one thing, you can disregard everything. Whether they do that or not is another story. I call it as I see each instance. Like, there are some things that I'm like, okay, that seems to be right. And then there are others where I have to scratch my head and I'm like, what? So, she stated that she wouldn't call John O'Keefe and Karen acting or looking drunk. She said that there was no tension that she saw in Karen Read and John O'Keefe. She mentioned she saw Brian Higgins' Jeep by the mailbox in the street. Told vehicle was out, so she looked. I don't know. Karen Read's SUV was in front of Higgins' Jeep, so if the mailbox is here by my thumb, Brian Higgins' Jeep is these fingers, and then Karen Read's car is this hand. Karen Read's car is in front of Higgins. I don't know how far up, because at one point, Higgins' Jeep is in front of the mailbox. Ricky D'Antano, Ryan Nagel, and Heather Maxson are in another vehicle behind Karen Read, and Karen Read is up here. So, I don't know. Cars are everywhere. Let's see. She asked Brian Albert to come to her house when she was interviewed by Proctor. The family, the family was talking about the traumatic night and the shock and awe. No one was interviewed separately. She didn't think that they needed to be interviewed separately because they were just a family and they were talking about things, and none of us were a witness, because she said what happened inside the house had nothing to do with outside the house. Turn page. She said that, everybody that was inside the house was not really a witness. She thought the only witnesses that Jen thought of were Jen herself and maybe her husband, which you don't think Carrie's a witness? She was with you when you found John and with Karen. She also states that Hank has talked Lank has talked to everyone after the family's powwow around the kitchen table. She denies bursting through her sister and brother-in-law's door when she went to wake them up. Last year, it was said that she burst through their doors and woke them up, and we were like, so you burst through their room. There's a German Shepherd there that is not great with strangers, and a Boston cop asleep in his bed who possibly has a gun in his nightstand, and you're going to startle them awake. Like, you could have been shot. But we found out, like, she said his house was unlocked. But he still could have a gun. Like, very unsafe. And the fact that no cop went with her, decided to clear the house first. But she said, she didn't want to startle them. Um, doesn't remember the dog being there. She said it was about 6:40ish when she went into the house. Um, she knows that Chloe's not good with other dogs. Um, she noticed that Ryan Nagel's lights in her peripheral vision were behind Karen Read. So when she was looking at the door, one of the times she was texting John O'Keefe, she saw the lights of Ryan Nagel's vehicle in her peripheral vision. But when she's looking at Karen Read's car by the flagpole, she can't see in her peripheral vision a body on the snow or a body on the lawn because she wasn't looking for it. Where she wasn't looking for Ryan Nagel's truck either. She just happened to catch it. And she says she saw tire tracks, which it was a dusting of snow. It wasn't even really snowing that much at this point. Like, there wasn't like a pile up and stuff on it. It was like a dusting of snow, if that. But she could see tire tracks that she wasn't looking for either. But if she's looking at the flagpole, she doesn't see a body laying there that's supposed to be there, according to all of them. It's interesting. She also ran into Nagel at some point, Julie Nagel, who is Ryan Nagel's sister. And she asked Nagel to see the text between Julie Nagel and her brother Ryan Nagel. Jennifer McCabe wanted to see these texts. And she asked her to screenshot them and send them to her. So Jennifer McCabe is being up in everybody's business. Hey, those texts from that night when your brother was here to get you, can you send me those? Can I see those? Like, she wanted to see the times or maybe make sure it didn't say anything incriminating. I don't know why she was wanting to know those. Was this for her timeline or to add it to their written timeline? Also, where the hell is this written timeline? Why has this not been handed over? You would think they would be like, "Oh no, DA, like we wrote this whole timeline. We're going to be helpful. We want to give you this. We wrote it all out for you so you know what happened." Where's that timeline? Because the defense should have that. But no eyes have seen that timeline they wrote out for Mrs. O'Keefe. Um, at 12:23, she says, oh, and she also did not share that screenshot with the police that she got from Julie Nagel. The text, she did not let the police knew that she had that screenshot. and that she just saw Julie Nagel go outside and then come right back in. She says at 12:23 a.m., she sent a text to John, and she saw the SUV when she sent that text. Um, she says she told Proctor when Proctor interviewed her that Karen said, "I hit him." Proctor didn't write that in his report, so now that's at least the second person that Jen McCabe has told that Karen said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." Proctor didn't write it in his report. Lank didn't write it in his report. So far, the "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him" still has not been documented by anybody. They brought up her grand jury testimony, which, funny enough, was 227 pages. A lot like that 227 Google search that we're going to talk about. House Long to Die in Cold. And apparently, when she took the stand for the first time in this trial, it was at 227. That 227 is haunting Jen McCabe. She hates that number. She don't want to ever hear or see that number ever again. But that 227 is out to get her. And in the grand jury testimony, she was asked no less than 12 times about Karen Read's words. And not once in the grand jury testimony did Jennifer McCabe ever say that Karen Read said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." These "I hit him" statements didn't come up till way later. The grand jury didn't know about the "I hit him" statements from Jen McCabe. That maybe she, remember, she forgot about Karen saying "I hit him," and then she remembered. And so that's why she had to call Lank back, is to be like, "Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you something. Come back to 34 Fairview." Which, why can't you just tell him that over the phone? Like, why do you need him to come back to 34 Fairview to tell him this information? Why did Lank need to go back there physically? She says that the "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him" is a statement that she will never forget, even though she did forget it at one point. She forgot to mention it to Lank originally. She forgot to mention it in the grand jury. Based on Lank and Proctor's report, she actually didn't say that to them. Those reports are wrong if it didn't say that. But she has no control over what is in the report. Jen has all the info, and she's the one telling everybody the info. She's the one that has it all. She has the timeline. She has screenshots. She has all this info. She's the one who discovered the body with Karen Read. She's the one that is telling the story. Let's see. Yeah, to call Lank on his cell phone, that she got the information. She told Lank about the "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." Let's see. She got Lank's cell phone number from Julie Albert. A lot of sitting and remembering, because she's like, "Well, once I sat and remembered things." But it's a statement you'll never forget. Why are you needing to remember things? But Lank's report doesn't say "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." Lank's report says that Jen told him that Karen said, "I hope I didn't hit him." Yes, this is a lot of multiple hearsays. ungames the telephone because it's from Karen to Jen to Lank's report. So now she's, told 3 people, and there's no documentation of it. She also says she talked to Sergeant Sean Good. And so that day 7 ends. Now we start with day 8. Still on cross-examination. Jen called Nicole Albert at 5:07 a.m. And that call shows 38 seconds. And it shows answered. Jen says she never talked to her sister. And I believe her sister said she never talked to her. They don't know why that call shows answered. But it's 38 seconds at 5:07. Karen called Jen Karen calls Jen at 4:53 a.m. And Jen supposedly called her sister at 5:07 a.m. Jen says she didn't remember making that call. You know what it also is happening at 5:07 a.m.? Karen Read is backing up into John O'Keefe's Chevy Traverse in the driveway, and Karen is headed to Jennifer McCabe's house. So she's hung up with Karen, and Jen has called her sister. Why has she not told anybody this? Why has she not brought this up? Because we have all been wondering, why didn't you call your sister? Why didn't you call your brother-in-law? And if people were saying that, I'd be like, "No, I did try to call my sister because I knew that's where John and Karen were the night before. We saw him there. So I called them to try to find out if they had seen John too. When Karen was asking me where he was, when I was calling Julie Albert, when I was calling the Beatties and all these people, yeah, I called my sister too." But she doesn't ever bring that up. She hides the fact and distance herself from calling her sister at 5:07 a.m. Why is that? Because to me, I would be like, "You're damn right I called them." But that's not how she is with this call. Yeah, she talked to Kendra. Yeah, but she just could not remember calling Nicole Albert when she was listing off all the people she called. She didn't remember calling her. That would be one of the ones I did remember. Um, they go into a group text with herself, her husband, Matt McCabe, Nicole Albert, and Brian Albert. Um, on February 1st, Jen says, while Carrie Roberts is at Jen McCabe's house and Proctor is interviewing Carrie Roberts, Jen is sitting in another room listening in or can hear certain things and texts everybody and says, Carrie is telling them everything, everything, all the stuff. And Matt McCabe also, they talk about people being interviewed or being over at D&E Pizza. Um, Matt McCabe, Jennifer McCabe's husband, says, make sure you tell him that the guy never went in the house. He's just that guy. He's just a man on the on the ground in the snow. Um, Somebody asked, you listening? Somebody says Carrie could write a book about, being interviewed, like all the stuff she's telling him, and she can go on and on and on. She could write a book. She's talking so much. It is also said that, yep, if she pleads out, it will end. If she fights, it will be an episode on February 1st. They're talking about if Karen Read pleads out, it will end if she takes a plea deal. If Karen Read doesn't plead out and she fights it, it will be an episode. What kind of episode? Why do you want her to plead out? Matt McCabe was worried about missing a basketball game or something because Carrie was going on and on about things. Um, and then they bring up another time that this is something that Jennifer McCabe had again forgot or didn't mention, didn't think anything of it, is there's a day that they went over to John O'Keefe's house, and Jen McCabe was riding with Carrie Roberts. So they say that they went from John O'Keefe's house, or she picked Jen up. They went to John O'Keefe's house, and then before dropping Jen back off at her house, they stopped by Officer Lang's house to drop Carrie Roberts, one of her kids, off. And that Officer Lang's wife came outside, got into the Carrie Roberts SUV, and talked to Carrie and Jen for a while. They were there for 45 minutes. At one point, Jen says she remembers going inside to use the restroom of Lank's house, said she didn't never see Officer Lank, but it's interesting. Officer Lank is inside with probably the kids. Jen needs to leave the car and go inside and go to the restroom. We don't know if she actually went to the restroom. She says she didn't talk to Lank, but who knows? Maybe she went to go get him more information because she told the people in the group chat, get more information tomorrow. Well, tomorrow is the day that she goes to Lank's house. Did she get more information? Who knows? Then she went back to the car. And then she says, then she got dropped off at home. But based on GPS location, what actually happened was Jen was picked up. They went to John O'Keefe's house. And then they left John O'Keefe's house. But at one point they went to 34 Fairview. She says they didn't go there and talk to anybody or go in the house. They just slowly drove by. But they were there for like 4 to 6 minutes. They just slowly drove by on their way to John O'Keefe's house. So they went from 34 Fairview to Meadows. Then when they left One Meadows, which is John O'Keefe's house, they went back to Jen's house. And then they went to Lank's house and then back to Jen's house. So why do you need, if you could have already gotten dropped off at your house, why did you need to be at your house and then also go to Lang's house, and then get dropped back at your house. Because she's like, "Oh, she was taking me home, and on my way home, we did this." Yeah, you left out the part where you drove by 34 Fairview slowly, where you made a stop there according to your GPS, and that you had already been taken home. So it wasn't on your way home to drop you back off at home that all this happened. You're lying about stuff again. You're omitting details. Oh, for good. Um, she said that at 12:29 a.m., it was 44 seconds. John O'Keefe, she said she didn't talk to him. Said she never spoke to him after 12:18. So there's a call between Jennifer McCabe and John O'Keefe at 12:29 a.m. that was 44 seconds. That was answered. Jen says she did not talk to John then. Um, they also talk about there were 7 missed calls to John O'Keefe from Jennifer McCabe, and those 7 calls took place in a span of 19 minutes, which an average of 2.5 minutes, Jen McCabe was calling John O'Keefe. These are the butt dials or advertly called him. She doesn't know how she did it, but somehow she called John O'Keefe not knowing, hung up from John O'Keefe not knowing because he didn't answer 7 times every 2.5 hours approximately for 19 minutes. Last trial, she called him butt dials. She doesn't remember making these calls. She just butt dials him multiple times. They are on John O'Keefe's phone, but they are not on Jen's phone. She thinks the butt dials are common and they can be common back to back. Butt dials are not common nowadays. You can make them, but the thing is if you make a butt dial, somebody either has to answer and yell it, basically, like yell at you and shout your name to see if you actually meant to call them, and then they hang up on you and they might call you back. Or if it's an unanswered butt dial, it goes to voicemail and you have a long voicemail until your phone decides to cut it off with a bunch of noise and no conversation and no message really, except for just a bunch of weird noise. And you can understand that, oh, they must have, butt dialed me. But 7 back to back, that's not common. And there are no voicemails on John O'Keefe's phone from Jennifer McCabe. If they were butt dials, there would be voicemails, and there isn't. The only voicemails that are on there are from Karen Read. Um, then the 227 is brought up. Jennifer Jen says she doesn't know the time to anything. Like she's not good with times. Um, and then she needs a paper to remember this. This had me so flustered because Jen knows that 227 is the time. She has been questioned about this 227 Google search numerous of times. She knows the timestamp 227. She can act like she doesn't, And I don't buy it. You know exactly what he's talking about when he asks you if you were Googling something at 2:27. She's like, "I don't know the time I was Googling anything." Yes, you do. Stop playing dumb. But the thing is this jury just hears her talk about, "I don't remember, I don't remember, I don't remember. Can you give me something to refresh my memory?" The jury doesn't know that I mean, AJ does tell them, "You've been asked about this numerous times by me, by um, Lally, one of the prosecutors, and others. When this 227 timestamp was found out, you were questioned about it by law enforcement. So to sit here and act like you don't know what 227 is give me a break." But does the jury know that she should know what 227 is and that she's playing dumb? I don't know if they'll know that. Um, she says that she knows that there's something that shows up in the record for 227, but that it's something that was misread. The report misread the Google search, that she didn't Google search "house long to die in the cold." She only did that after they found John O'Keefe, 6:23 and 6:24 AM. Doesn't know why it's on the report. I don't even know if we know why it's on the report. Um, and he says, "Well, did you tell Carrie Roberts about Karen Read asking you to Google hypothermia?" And she said they created a timeline together. And my question is still, where is this timeline? And then and then she says, "But we created it and my sister Denise wrote the timeline out." And HI was like, "What is your sister's name?" Okay. What's her last name? Is she here today? If you could you point your sister out? And Jennifer McCabe has to point her sister out as that's the lady who wrote the timeline for them. I If I was Jen's sister, Denise, I would be like, "I swear to God, why? Why did you drag me into this? I had nothing to do with this, and here you are, you're pointing me out in the courtroom." I could see Denise being so mad at Jen for bringing her into this shit. She's like, "Oh, no, bitch." Um, Jen knows there's no audio of Karen asking Jen about this Google search. And this is when AJ, Alan Jackson, sorry, brings up that Jennifer McCabe keeps apologizing about things. Did somebody tell you to apologize? Why are you apologizing? And this is Alan Jackson still being so confused as to who is this Jennifer McCabe sitting in front of us? Because this is not the Jennifer McCabe we saw last year. Why do you have manners now? You didn't have manners last year. And it's because she's been prepped. She's had time to reflect. People have probably told her, "You can't act like that on the stand." And Jen McCabe, for the most part, keeps her composure throughout Cross. She is defiant sometimes, she's stubborn sometimes, but she's not aggressive like she was last year. She's not just in your face rude like she was last year. This jury does not get to see that one. And people are just taken aback, like, why are you so different? She says that she never deleted that 227 Google search. Um, she also says that she talked to Officer Saraf, which was one of the first officers to come on scene. Um, you can hear in videos that Karen Read says, "My boyfriend left and never came home." And then Alan Jackson does something that I think is really good. He goes through many clips of the morning that John O'Keefe was found. And in all these clips, there was like 3 or 4 clips that he played. She asks Jen, "Who's talking to the police in that one?" "I am." "Who looks to be talking to the police in this one? By yourself?" "Me." "This one?" "Me." Jen McCabe is the one that is talking to the officers most of the time. Jen McCabe is making timelines. Jen McCabe is going to other witnesses and asking them to screenshot their messages and send them to her. Jennifer McCabe talks about, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." Jennifer McCabe says that she saw Karen Read's vehicle at 34 Fairview that night. Jennifer McCabe, Jennifer McCabe, Jennifer McCabe is everywhere in this on the 34 Fairview side. Jennifer McCabe has her fingers on everything about as much as Proctor has his fingers in everything. Remember, she wants to be helpful, except when people who are outside her bubble come knocking at her door. And then we get to the end of her cross. And this is right before the lunch break. And Alan Jackson says, "Why didn't you go get Brian Albert out of the house to help with the scene, the 911 scene?" She said, "Did you not have any safety concerns?" She said she had no safety concern because inside and outside are different. John never went in the house. And AJ was like, "But you don't know that. At this point, you do not know. Why didn't you go in that house and wake up your brother to help with the scene, a first responder, someone who knows CPR? Why didn't you go ask your sister and them, 'Do you know why John O'Keefe is on the lawn? Did he come back last night? Do you know anything that's going on?'" And Jen McCabe has no safety concerns. But there's a dead guy on the lawn. Your sister and brother-in-law are in the house. They haven't answered their phones. They haven't woken up, and you're not concerned? And Alan Jackson is like, "Your sister's not answering her phone." And Alan Jackson says, "Is the reason you didn't go in the house and you had no concerns is because you knew what happened. You knew that your sister and brother-in-law were safe. You didn't have to worry about them because you knew what happened." because she had no concern about her brother-in-law or her sister. If there is a dead man on my sister's lawn or my brother's lawn, you can bet your ass I am going in the house, or I will have somebody go in that house and check on him because I want to know if they are okay, that somebody didn't go in there and kill them too. But Jennifer McCabe didn't worry about that. She didn't wonder about it, never came across her mind. She was fine going in there by herself to go wake them up when she says Link went and asked her. She didn't need an officer to go with her. She didn't want anybody to check to see if the house was cleared. Nothing. She went in there blind with a dead man on the lawn. Another police officer. How do you know this person wasn't going around killing police officers? They're both Boston cops. It's not like they work for two separate departments. They worked for the same department. What if this maniac that was out on the loose was going after Boston cops? Jennifer McCabe had no concerns about anything in the house because in her mind, there's a difference between what went on inside and what went on outside. But Jen McCabe ends with that she wasn't worried because Karen said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Her tail light was broken and there were pieces everywhere. And AJ says, so you solved the case. You solved the whole case. Which begs to question, why are you writing a timeline if you know exactly what happened? If you have somebody admitting to hitting your friend and there's all this evidence strewed upon the lawn and your friend also has a busted taillight, why do you need a timeline if Karen admitted what happened? You don't need a timeline. She admits it. There's evidence everywhere. Her taillight's busted. The end. But wait a second. Taillight pieces were nowhere to be found the morning John O'Keefe's body was discovered. After first people leaf blew with a leaf blower the snow, there were no taillight pieces found. But after everybody had left, around 10 or 11, I would say everybody was gone. And from 10 or 11 on January 29th, 2022, till about 4:50, 5 o'clock, nobody was guarding 34 Fairview's scene. There was nothing securing the crime scene. The tape had blown all over the place. It was nowhere. They didn't have an officer to make sure that nobody tampered with the scene. Nothing. So anything that went on between 10 or 11 a.m. and about 4:50 p.m., no one has any idea if anything happened in that time. Because magically, when that car gets to the Sally Port around 5:30, 5:35, and the car is now in Canton PD and Massachusetts State Police custody, taillight pieces are found starting at around 5:45. Where were those taillight pieces when the leaf blower was blowing around things? Why was there no taillight pieces flying around with the leaf blower? Why are there no pictures of things? But Jen McCabe solved the case and says that's why she wasn't worried. That's how the cross ended. I think it was a very, very good end to cross because that's been one of the biggest things that I've wondered about. Why are you not worried about the people in the house? Why was law enforcement not worried about him? Why didn't they search the home? Nothing. Nobody cared about what was inside that house because Jen McCabe said so. Jen McCabe was talking to everybody, and we're just taking Jen McCabe's word, which if everything Jen McCabe said after you checked out to be true, then fine. But the fact that you didn't even investigate because someone said so is ridiculous because now we're just taking everybody at their word. So now if you commit a crime and you say, I didn't do it or I wasn't there, they just have to take your word. They don't need to look into it because you told them so. Because that's how police work, right? You just tell them you didn't do it and everything's fine and nothing ever happens. As long as you don't admit to it, you can't get in trouble. No, that's not how it works in the real world. But it works like that there. So then we have Hank Brennan gets back up on direct. He goes over text messages between Carrie Roberts and Jen McCabe. And, that because he wanted to fix some of the stuff with the group texts about the guy never went in the house. Carrie's telling him everything, all these things. They look like they were colluding in the group text. They didn't look like they were sad or sympathizing or whatever. They looked like they were colluding. So Hank Brennan on redirect wants to go over the text between Carrie and Jen. But what I remember from those texts, I don't have the exact, you can go back and watch them, but most of the texts, Carrie was talking to Jen, and Jen might have said something here and there, but most of the stuff was Carrie was so sad. Carrie was just distraught. Carrie was drinking wine and needing to like take a bath and um that she feels for Peggy. I don't feel like Jen's messages that he kind of pointed out were anything like Carrie's. And I know a lot of people want to hate on Carrie, but Carrie has had Jen McCabe in her ear the entire time. Carrie did not go out and party with them the night before. She just got brought into this because of Karen Read, and then Jen McCabe took her under her wing, and they became besties, and she's like, "Oh, Karen said I hit him. Karen asked me to Google house long to die in the cold." Karen's taillights, are well, she didn't tell her because Carrie got to see the taillight, but Carrie is distraught over this. Carrie also showed emotion in the first trial and the second emotion about her friend. She was very close to John. John might be the one that got away. I think they went to junior prom together. Um, I don't know. But Carrie and John have a long history of being friends. And to me, the text message showed that Carrie was the one that was sad and stressed and like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened." And Jen maybe being like, "Yeah, it's sad." But none of that was going on in the group texts. So Hank was like, "See, they were sad. They weren't always colluding." But to me, it was more Carrie was sad. And Carrie has just had Jen McCabe in her ear. And so Carrie just thinks what Jen McCabe is telling her is true. And then Hank Brennan says, "You always cooperated with police, right?" And she says, "Yeah, I always cooperated with them." So Alan Jackson gets up for a recross because he's like, "Oh, hell no. You just said that you always cooperate with police, right?" He said, "But you ended the interviews with the feds." She's like, "Yeah, I asked to end it to seek counsel, and then I talked to them later many times and cleared up many misconceptions. And I know that you know that the investigation is closed now. So I think I helped them very well." What? You think you are the reason that the investigation is possibly closed is because everything you said, they just took it at face value and were like, "Yeah, I think I helped them a lot. I'm the reason it's closed." Like, she didn't say I'm the reason, but she's like, "I helped him very much, and you know it's closed now, right? Like, I helped him so much, they're not investigating anymore." And the thing is, I don't know how that's gonna play for the jury either. It's one of those moments where the jury is not doesn't know or isn't supposed to know that these are the feds. Whether they put it together or not, I have no idea. But if they do think this other agency, or if they figure out it's the FBI or the feds or whoever, was talking to Jen, and Jen is now saying that she helped him so much and the investigation is over, are they going to think that they were investigating Karen Read, and that's why she's still in this chair? Or are they gonna think that they were looking into Jen McCabe and they're no longer looking into her? I didn't like this. I thought this opens the door for the defense to be able to say, maybe they're not investigating anymore, but these accident reconstructionist people that were hired by that same agency says that John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. The jury needs to know that that same agency that Jim McCabe helped so much, and the investigation is now closed, according to her, also has people saying that John O'Keefe wasn't struck by a car. Do I think that Judge Bev Canoni, is going to allow the defense to get into that? No. I don't care if they busted down that door and they set the door on fire and that door is no longer there. That door, it doesn't even exist anymore. I still think Judge Canoni will say the door wasn't opened. You can't talk about that. You can't bring that fact up. They are gonna be able to say a third party hired ARCA originally. They have retained them now, but in the beginning, how they came into this case was through the feds without input. Well, they had information, but they had not talked to or didn't know who Karen Read was, didn't know who the defense was, didn't know who the Commonwealth is. They just were given given certain information from the feds to say, "Did this happen this way?" They went and did their thing. They said, "No, this couldn't have happened." And then the feds handed over those reports because it's exculpatory to the Commonwealth and the defense. They both got it. Defense was like, "Oh, this shows my client didn't do it." So the defense was like, "Hey, can you come testify that my client did not do this?" and then there's a whole bunch of drama. But Jen's saying that they're no longer investigating. I think it prejudiced Karen to be like, "Well, that investigation is closed, but Karen Read is still sitting in the defendant's chair, and she's still the one being charged with murder." I think they have to have a way to explain this out. I think it is too prejudicial based on Jen McCabe's words to Karen Read. That is just my opinion. I don't think the judge is gonna do anything about it. Hank is going to whine and cry about it, but that is the cross and the redirect and the recross of Jennifer McCabe. And the conclusion of witness number 12. Something interesting as well is that after the lunch break, before Jen McCabe was on redirect, Paul O'Keefe, who, as I mentioned, if you watched my Jen McCabe direct video, him and his mom both sit in that first bench, the first row bench, and then there's a second bench row behind them. Paul O'Keefe, who would sit at the end of the bench closest to Karen Read's defense table, has now been moved to the second row and over here, as far away from Karen Read as he can get and the back. There's been rumors that he maybe said something to Karen while she was passing by to go up to sidebar. There has been rumors that Karen Read's parents or her dad has said some stuff or had some emotions. I don't know. But where Paul O'Keefe sat for the whole entire first trial and all the way till now in the second trial has been moved. And every day since he's been moved back there, he has sat in that seat. He has not been back in his old seat or on the front row. I don't know if he's permanently been moved back there or not because of things that he might have done. Those are just rumors. I don't know why he sits back there. There was a huge break and some stuff, and people were talked to. Both families were pulled into the courtroom, and everybody was kicked out except for the attorneys and the family. I know that there were people that were pulled into an office. I don't know if it was the DA's office or what they were talked to, but we came back from all that, and Paul O'Keefe has now been moved. So that was interesting. But that is going to be it for me for this video. Stay tuned for the next witness and turn those notification bells on so you know when they're coming out. Hit that like because it's free and it helps me in the algorithm. Bye.